efficiency game.
Yeah.
It's like my big gripe with Arkwright is that you literally can do anything you want. It's just if you do it in the wrong sequence, it's going to cost you more.
Yeah, it is kind of generally about $1 here, $1 there. I agree with that.
So if I'm playing Arkwright, I'm like the only thing I can do to really mess with people is like adjust the prices and just like dump a whole bunch of crap on there. But I really can't handicap people more than I want to because they can do all these actions and you can't go on their action board to do stuff.
Sure. Just so you know, I did start like this as a live stream, and I did that so that I could get the link that Paul wanted.
Oh, that's fine. We can get some comments. Arkwright's amazing, TC. You're wrong. Oh, hang on. Let me get my copy of Consulting Detective. Oh, it's over here. That's the new one. Yeah, I need to go in and figure out which case it was that was all screwed up. Did you go through this and edit it? I thought you did. Oh, you were going to. Yeah, they were so upset. Carissa was going to like edit it like a student paperwork, but she's an English teacher, and edit it and try to fix the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 1, 2, or 3? 3 or 4. Okay, I'm
I have now tweeted, and then I replied to the original Longview tweet because I don't have access to the Longview Twitter because that's still like Jeff's personal one that he's telling everybody about how great Time of Crisis is.
Yeah, we need to get that away from him at some point. I'm just lazy.
Yeah. Well, I can actually tweet through it. I can't like reply to anyone, but I can tweet through it only that I'm starting a live stream. So like that, I think I see Paul there. It looks like
It's Paul!
Yes.
Welcome,
I'm
Paul.
here. I don't know why I appear to be all yellow.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Yes, you are very quite jaundiced. Is that because of Dunkirk?
No, it's an old laptop, but it's not normally this bad. But clearly something's wrong with the color balance. Yeah. Oh well. Thankfully, this video's not going out. So
you could always just call it. It's almost a little green, kind of like pea soup. Like
it does look very, very green.
Pea soup,
and I don't know why. But at the back,
no case 2. We got 60
this looks
points
blue, and it's not blue.
Right. Well, welcome, Paul. It's nice to meet you here.
When was the last time I was on the show?
Would have been prior to me, and I believe I do remember hearing you. Were you on the Mage Knight episode?
Yeah, and Gaming Rules didn't exist then. And Gaming Rules has been in existence now for 2.5 years. So it's been a while.
So at this point, Paul, it's been about 2-3 weeks since TC and I have taken over from Jeff Gamble. So back then, I was a consumer of the Longview. I had just at that point, I don't even think I had the inkling to be on the Longview. I don't think I knew of any game that I felt comfortable talking about. But I loved your episode then. And
now you're running it.
We both are.
TC is the main he's the main nuts and bolts guy. Okay. I'm just full of crap, and that works well.
Well, what happened was Jeff sent out this email saying, "I want to quit." I'm like, "Okay, you need help?" So I said, "Yeah, help me." So I started helping him. Then he said, "I want you to take over the show." I'm like, "Okay, sure."
So Jeff's not involved in it at all anymore. Then
he will be as like a guest. So he's taken on more kind of like that type of guest role. He's still very much like in contact with Jeff all the time, but he's at that point where I think he said he put in about 5 years with the Longview, and it was I think it was time the scheduling and everything, and full like I inherited the Longview podcast Gmail account, and it took me about a full day to delete all of those emails. Like it it was thousands of unopened emails. Like it's one, like I keep around my like read emails just in case I need a reference, but these were like all unopened emails. And
so why did it take you a whole day? Because it's Control and A and then delete.
Yeah, but you gotta pause through them and see if there's some like juicy stuff.
I was able
right?
to do that quite a bit, Paul. I was able to do that quite a bit, but I wanted to like make sure that I wasn't deleting it because I'd never seen any of these.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Twitter reference, the Twitter notifications. I was like, okay, Control A, and I would scan it, and it definitely did. Like I'd say, I spent about an hour to 2 hours in the first few hundred, and then I just started to be like, if it's not important, they'll send it again.
So how has the audience for the Longview accepted the transition to new ownership?
Oh, they hate me.
Okay.
No,
what audience? I think they're all gone.
We're tanking it, man. What audience? We lost everyone. Because a lot of people listen to podcasts because of the people. They like the people that are doing it, and they feel an association with them, and they like listening to them. And obviously, if you've kept the name, the brand, the Longview, but you've changed the people, then some things are going to change there. All
right, Paul. I just wanted to take really quick note of what type of questions we're going to ask each other here today.
Okay.
We're gonna get right there. We're gonna get right there, Paul. No, the thing.
Do you keep the same format for the show?
Basically, yeah. And I think that was kind of up for debate. Like what Jeff did. Jeff kind of did all this, Paul. So he kind of did all the thinking for us.
Yeah.
He put out like a message, and it was actually made it a contest where people could comment with the things that they love most, comment with the things that they are most worried about, and just basically get advice from the audience. We got about there was like
lots.
Those are about 4 or 5 pages of comments. So cool. I mean, we got a lot of comments, and basically like the main thing that people come to the Longview for is the specific in-depth look at a single game.
Yes.
And so that's the main thing that you'll see being conserved here. Now, the quick looks and stuff like that are going to be kind of more of a periphery thing, and TC and I are doing that. When we've done, I think, 1 episode of quick looks, right, TC?
Yeah, we did it when we did what episode was that?
The Indonesia.
Indonesia, yeah.
Okay.
I got that one ready to go.
Yeah, and so we did a little bit of quick looks after that, but part of it, I mean, like I don't know, Paul, if you're familiar, but I've met you once at Gen Con.
Last year?
2 years ago?
2 years. The first year where we had the tiny booth.
Okay. You're right. It was last year. It was last year because I'm already like I'm not able to make it to Gen Con this year, so I'm already like this upcoming Gen Con's already a past Gen Con to me.
I hear it's going to be a crowded nightmare anyway, so you're not going to miss out on much.
Did they like sell out or something?
It sold out. 70,000 people, and it's sold out.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, but I you know what? I'm gonna miss it though. It's really sad, but as a teacher, my teacher meetings start, and those beginning of the year things. Like I only get 2 personal days in a year, so to use both of them for like the first easy meetings of the year, when you just kind of got to go sit down, sit through a bunch of stuff, and kind of get yourself mentally prepared for the fact that you're now going to have to start wearing like something besides t-shirts and sandals all day. But
yeah, well, I was almost at WBC. You've just got back from WBC, is that right?
That's Jeff.
Jeff did.
Yeah,
Jeff.
I want to make it out there. He lives like right around WBC, so.
Oh, okay.
So if you were following the Twitter feed there, like Jeff's still using the Longview podcast as like his Twitter handle, and so that's kind of a more of a complicated transition because it was not really it was a Twitter. His Twitter was more of his personal Twitter, together with being a Longview Twitter. So that's more like the process of separation there is a little bit more complex. So
yeah, the plan is to have the plans have everything.
You have access to that Twitter account, don't you?
I was saying this earlier. I can only tweet things when they're linked to other things I do have access to. Meaning, like when I made that tweet that we were starting this recording 10 minutes ago, I was only able to do that because I have the Gmail and the YouTube account, and I was able to click a little checkbox that says tweet this because Jeff had already linked it. So every time I want to make an announcement via the Longview, I have to start a YouTube video feed just so that I can send out a tweet.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we probably should crack on with it.
Sure. Yeah.
Timings and stuff.
Restarted.
Yep, yep. Well, I met you there. I have the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly is the thing. I'm the host of the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, which you might remember, Andy Dennison.
Yes.
And so he's on the. We just recorded last night. And anyway, yeah, that's the thing that I kind of started up with together with Andy and Trent and John. And anyway,
and we got Carissa over here on the other line. We're gonna be sharing the microphone here.
Hello, Carissa. It'd be the first time I've met Carissa, TC's wife, who's a Sherlock Holmes aficionado, correct?
Ooh, excellent.
Yeah, I do.
Which is your favorite one then? Favorite Sherlock Holmes?
You mean as an actor or a game or as
an actor?
That'd be Jeremy Brett.
I was going to say, if you don't say Jeremy Brett, I'm hanging up right now. So.
There's really no other choice.
Yeah.
You seem really affected. You seem really like Benedict Cumberbatch.
I like Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch is awesome.
Yeah, it's just so many differences in the show in general.
Yeah.
So it was very appealing, and now I'm still I enjoy it, but it doesn't keep me as entertained or as interested as the Jeremy Brett episodes.
Yep. Okay.
It's more fun just to see the changes that they've done for each case.
Of course, the greatest actor ever to play that, though, is Robert Downey Jr.
You think?
Those movies are like, there's like so little Sherlock Holmes actually about them. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're entertaining. My family loves them, but like, gosh, they're kind of missing the point. Like the intelligent, which is my point, Paul. Like having you on here, I was really hoping that by the end of this, I'd have like a similar accent to yours, and hopefully it would kind of match. It would match my snobby attitude a little bit better. It would match, you know.
Try.
You know what's funny is that
I'm actually recording some poetry for a lady in the States who likes my accent so much. She sent me a list of poems that she wants me to read out, record, and just send her the MP3s. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I don't know what she's going to use them for, but I kind of don't want to know. But I'll be doing that. But she brings me cakes at every convention. She brings me chocolatey snacks at every convention. So yeah.
Okay,
it's a good relationship.
Very much so. Like, yeah, this is a normal relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like paying somebody to get them to record stuff and bringing them gifts. Yes, that is absolutely great. So anyway, before we get started here, let's just get the Dunkirk spoilers right out of the way.
Okay. Well, who's seen it?
I haven't.
Nobody, just you.
Okay.
So that's what this episode's going to be actually about. This is going to be an hour and 20 minutes of Dunkirk spoilers with Paul Grogan.
Okay, right.
Was it good?
When do you want me to start recording my end of the audio, by the way?
You go for it now, man.
Crap. I gotta.
Hey, Joe, start Audacity. I'm supposed to remind you about that.
Yes. You saying that, Paul, and you saying that, TC. I've now got Audacity going, and I'll do a little countdown here. And yeah, we'll just. I mean, you've been on this before, Paul. I don't need to explain you anything. I just apologize in advance. Anyway, because this back, you had this back when it was handled by the great Jeff Gamble. So don't expect that. But if you lower them to rock bottom.
Okay, they are
might
lowered.
Be able to impress you.
Yeah.
All right, here we go, guys. 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to the Long View Podcast, a podcast in which we take an in-depth look at games that have been around for quite a while. On today's podcast, I'm joined by my wondrous co-host.
That would be me, TC.
And his lovely wife.
Hello, I'm Carissa.
We're going to be talking about one of Carissa's favorite games, and we have got quite a big heavy hitter joining us as our guest host today. And he's a man who I believe needs no introduction, but for those of you who might need it, he is Paul Grogan, behind Gaming Rules videos, as well as one of the co-designers or a designer of a Mage Knight expansion. And just in general, Paul, I feel like we might be like gaming soulmates from across the pond here. And I actually have been making you cupcakes but the problem is I eat them all.
You see, that's where you're going wrong. You're doing the first part, you're making the cupcakes, but then not giving them to me and eating them yourself. That's where you're going wrong. But we can work on that. We can work on that.
No, I think from everything that I've heard, which by the way, Paul, I was just listening to your most recent Gaming Rules videos podcast, I think it was from YouTube. This was on the on Punchboard Media, which the Longview podcast is a proud member of Punchboard Media, together with Gaming Rules. And this last episode that you were doing was all about blind play testing, which was this connects really well to what we're talking about here, because Paul, I don't know if we got our times mixed up a little bit, but when you sent a message, it was like, "Where are you guys at?" I was actually just starting. You might recognize this, as I was just starting the very first case, and I was trying to get through it. And you have your name here on this. You have your name here in this product right here in the back. I see Gaming Rules.
Yep.
So we are talking today about the great Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, a game that's been around for like almost 4 decades. And Paul has a long storied history with it, as well as quite a bit of involvement. And Paul, I'll let you take it from there. Tell us a little bit about like what is your experience with Sherlock, and what have you done with it most recently?
So I grew up being a fan of Sherlock Holmes, from watching the black and white films with Basil Rathbone, then through to the Jeremy Brett TV series in the 80s. But I've always been a massive fan of Sherlock Holmes. 1983, I think it was, I was on holiday with my parents in a caravan somewhere in the south of England. And I think, I mean, it's a long time ago, so my memory's a little bit hazy, but I just got into the gaming hobby, started playing D&D, had some of those adventure game book type things. And I remember we went into a game store, and I don't even remember whereabouts in England this was. We went into the game store, and there was a game called Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. I'm a massive fan of Sherlock Holmes, so I bought it, took it back to the caravan. We tried playing case 1. Had absolutely no idea what we were doing, and scored about minus 95.
I feel so bad. Like, just because Paul sounds incredibly intelligent with this accent does not mean that he is just this higher degree of being, because I had the same problem. I'm sorry to interrupt, Paul.
I was 13, so I was 13. And to be fair, case 1 is. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Family friendly.
I will definitely take it out. Don't worry about it.
It's very difficult. Case 1 is very difficult. It's a bit long. This is the original game, and it's really, really difficult. Well, I thought it was really difficult at the time, so we weren't able to piece together any parts of the puzzle. But back in the 80s, rule books were nowhere near like rule books are now, and we struggled to even work out how you're even supposed to play this game. It wasn't actually very clear what you were supposed to do. I think we did it right. And as I say, we got all the questions wrong. We went to about 30 places and we scored massively negative score. So that's how I started.
Sounds like our last game, Carissa.
But every gaming group that I've ever been a member of since then, I have got out Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. So I've moved around the UK with my job. I've lived in various places of the UK, and everywhere I've been, and every gaming group I've been a member of, the game comes out and I run it. And what I do is I don't just run it with one group. I split all the people into like 2 or 3 groups, and then they all play it at the same time. And I'm running between them, reading out clues, and they're making all the notes. And then we see who scored the most at the end of the day.
Wow, so and I find this with like one book, but you're doing it like running a party, several different concurrent games.
Yes. So one group will come and see me and say, "Can we have you next?" And I'll say yes, and I'll go there and they'll say, "We want to go to 42 Northwest," and I'll read out 42 Northwest, and they'll all take notes, and then I'll say, "Right, you all done?" And they say, "Yeah," and then I'll go somewhere else. And then while they're thinking of where to go next, another group, and it's quite a lot of work, and I'll be running between the rooms and reading out clues. But yeah, I've done that many times for lots and lots of different groups over the years. So I've always been a big fan of the game.
That's really cool. So that answers one of my questions actually right off the bat, which is this game has a shelf life to it for you as a player, but this is how you've continued to be a part of this game, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I absolutely love it. And until recently, when narrative-driven games have become more popular again, this was the only game of its kind that was out there. And in fact, the only games out there now that are like this are sort of clones of this. And there was Mythos Tales that came out this year or last year, which is the same game but in a Cthulhu thing. It is unique. There is nothing else like it. And I thought it was absolutely, you know, I love the game. I love the Sherlock Holmes, and I also thought that the writers who actually created these cases and created the clues and the links to the cases, obviously some of them are better than others, you know, huge respect to the people who created it. Really, really good job.
Absolutely. Yeah. To me, that's really the single greatest necessity for a game like this to be able to succeed at all is incredibly good writing. And we're talking like, I mean, this to me was like short story level quality of writing. And to me, it almost felt like that might be part of the design process, is that they just write this down, get this story to where it's one that if you read it beginning to end in, you know, prose form or in an anthology, where you would be very impressed with it. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
I know it was really good when Istari Games got the rights to republish it, which was, I can't remember when, 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like that. Unfortunately, I was saddened to see what they did with it. The first Istari version was, I think it's fair to say, terrible. It was full of errors, full of typos, not just, you know, it was full of typos, but it was full of actual errors as well. I mean, the first printing, I think, had missing pages. But there was one case in particular where they'd actually changed the solution. It's the weakest case of the original 10 cases. And a lot of people have said, this is an awful case and we don't like it. And it's a bit stupid. So what Istari Games did is they actually changed the answers to the questions. They changed who did it and why. But then they forgot to change any of the clue points.
Yeah, that would be the nefarious case 3, right? Yeah. When we played case 3, we brought it to a game store, right? Was it CloudCap? And Chris was really excited about it, and she wanted to show a lot of people. So she brought out the next case, which was case 3, and that session did not go well at all.
Hours of trying to find even
and then when you get the answers at the end, and you're like, well, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Then we were hours trying to figure out where they came up with those answers.
And there was hours of going through the book trying to figure out how it all chained together.
Emails and emails for the next couple days trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah. So that was that. Now, Istari Games did a number of different printings over the years that they had the license to it. And I believe that the very last one was generally okay. I think it still had lots of typos in it. But as far as actual content, I think they'd resolved most of the issues. There were still other issues. That the choice of the font that they used was very, very flowery. You could hardly read it.
Font, man. That font's awful.
You know, they took a game which I loved, and they wanted to bring it to a new audience, which is great. But they did a pretty poor job with it. So when Space Cowboys got the license or got the rights to do it, because Space Cowboys and Istari are kind of the same thing now, but they basically decided that they were going to relaunch it. It was like, right, let's just hope that they do a good job with it and they do it properly. And then they gave the editing job to me, and I was like, oh, right, so it's my responsibility to make sure it's done correctly.
I'm sorry. How can you complain about that? How can you complain now? Like they did a. How was the job done, by the way, Paul? How did it end up? Is it?
I'm very happy with it.
Okay.
Yes. Saying that, this week, somebody contacted me and said that in one of the newspapers for one of the cases in the Jack the Ripper and West End Adventures, there was a typo and it said Serbia instead of Serbia.
Like Serbia instead of Serbia.
So I didn't do
V.
Yeah, but the version that I got sent, and this was funny because Space Cowboys were a client of mine anyway. I'd already done some work for them, so they offered me this work, and I went, and they had no idea of my history with the game. And I said, oh, well, it's interesting that you've offered me this game. Did you know this? And I told them the story that I've just told you. And they went, well, it sounds like you're the right man for the job. And I was like, yeah. And I do a lot of rulebook editing.
Yeah.
a lot. I've lost track of how many rule books I edit a year. Nothing has made me more proud than being the editor on the new version of Sherlock Holmes, because of my love for the game. And, you know, obviously I get paid for the editing work I do. That's fine. I need that money to buy food.
Yeah.
But when what brings the most personal enjoyment for me is when people get that game and people are enjoying that game, and I've had a hand in that. That is very, very rewarding. Now, what they did is when they sent me all of the files to edit, they sent me all of the text from the Eastari Games version with all the typos in. So what I was doing was correcting typos, and it appears that what they'd done, and this is I basically learned how all these typos got in there. They'd taken an original 1983 edition of the game, which I've got, which was, you know, when we didn't have InDesign to do layouts, it was all done old school, and they'd used OCR software to bring it in, and they'd not proofread it. So the typos, some of the typos were hilarious. In one of the cases, somebody got a knife in the box. I thought was quite funny. Or the dock struck 12. And I was like, the clock.
The dock.
And there was so many things where it was obvious OCR software had been used, because if you put a C and an L together,
it looks like a D, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there was one case in particular where every single word that ended in an L, a lowercase L, the OCR software replaced it with a right-hand square bracket. So I was going through it, so I was having to fix all of that.
Shadow or something like that, like the shadow, the way that it was like sitting on, like the way that it was reading it. That's that's bizarre. But it was just one case. Really weird. So a lot of the editing work that I did was fixing that, and that was just time consuming, and I went through it and I did it. And you can't just use a spell checker because some of the words that it was correcting it to were real words, so you can't just use a spell checker. But the reason what made me quite proud is that in those original 10 cases, which have now been published as, what's it called? The Times, it's the I've got
Thames
it up
Murder.
here.
Yeah, the Thames Murders and Other Adventures or something like that.
Yeah,
that's the original.
Cases, yep.
The original 10 cases. They'd reordered them a bit. They'd moved 8 to 2 and they'd moved whatever, but it was the original 10 cases. Over the years, it's been found that those cases actually contain some slight errors. And I don't mean errors like somebody's at the wrong location, but something doesn't quite make sense. Some clue points don't quite line up. And the game's been around for so long. This has been talked about so many times on BGG and various threads. And I thought, oh, I wonder if they'll let me fix this. So I went to them and I said, okay, you want me to edit the text and you want me to fix all of these typos and you want me to do all of this. Would you mind if I made a few suggestions about actual changes that we can make to it? And they went, sure, go ahead. So I did, and they've accepted them. So I got to fix things in a game that that have been there for such a long time.
Yeah, you basically just fixed 35 years of
a frustration and anger.
Yeah, little inconsistencies in those original cases that have always been there, and they basically gave me permission to suggest fixes for them. Which I did, and we discussed it at length, and we put them in there. And yeah, that made me really proud to be involved in doing that.
I think you just became Carissa's hero, because when we were playing the Eastari version, she was just ripping her era, because she's a creative writer and she does editing, and she taught English classes in college level. And she's like, this thing just needs someone to edit it and go through it and make it better. It's so good. But yeah, so I think you just really
part of the fun of the game is being able to read out those narratives, and between the font and the errors, then you get hung up and you lose that atmosphere.
It pulls you out.
Yeah. So
that's awesome, Paul. Well, what you come at it from, my first question actually that I'm gonna keep forgetting if I don't ask it, at what point in your history with the game, which spans 35 years, almost 34 years.
Yeah, I don't know how, because I'm only 27, so I don't know how that's possible, but that's another story.
Old man.
At what point did you finish the 10th case? The last case of these.
Only when I was doing the editing of the new version.
Wow. Okay, that's
So,
interesting because I feel like I love the game and I had made it to the same problem. Like I made it to case number 3. And I don't know exactly what version I have of the Ishtari, but I know that I purchased it in like 2013 or 2014. So it very well could be like the original printing that has all those issues, but it's been a while. And my thoughts on it were kind of like, I'm going to keep coming back to it. But like, man, there's a few just experiences that made me like, ready for something fresh.
Yeah.
And but that just makes me so happy that you were able to take, essentially they asked somebody who's been like pretty much standing from a pulpit with this game in one hand, with the map of London in one and the case book in the other. And you've been basically doing essentially blind playtests of this game to groups throughout your longest storied history with it, right? I mean, when you do 4 different things, like you're just not getting paid at that point to do what you...
No, not at all. But in all of that time, I'd only ever played up to, I think, case 6 or case 7. And I think the last 3 cases, 8, 9, and 10, I don't think I'd ever played. Because every time I take it to a new group, I always start with case 1, and then we progress to case 2. And I've got as far as maybe case 3 or 4, and then we get busy doing other things. So when I got given the editing job to do, I was like, okay, well, that means I'm actually going to have to play through case 8, 9, and 10 finally.
Did you actually just play through them, or did you like read their transcripts and correct them that way?
Played through them as if I was playing it, and obviously found lots and lots of errors and things along the way. And then afterwards, the next day, read through every single other clue point, and then tried to link them all together. Because when you're reading the clue points on their own, you're like, okay, so you've just gone to a sailor's house and you found this information. How do you get there? What links to here?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm then going back and I'm trying to find that. And, there was one clue point in particular where I was like, I have no idea how anybody gets to this point. I think this was actually in one of the West End adventures. And they were like, yeah, we need to look at that. And the clue that got you there was so tenuous, I couldn't even work it out having the whole book in front of me and reading every single clue point. So that's one of the ones where they let me make it. We added, I think you're in somebody's room, and I said, why don't you have them leave the room? And while they've left the room, you notice a piece of paper on the table which has got the name of a company on it, and then they come back in the room. And they let me put that in there, and that is the link that gives you the clue that the accountant's involved, or something like that. So yeah, it was playing through it first, because I didn't want to miss out on my enjoyment of actually playing through the case. But yes, I'd never actually played the last 3 cases of the original 10 until I got the editing job of the new version. Yeah.
Wow. So
we're gonna buy this.
Go ahead.
We're gonna buy the new version here, honey. The way you're talking about it, because I saw the reprint of it. Yeah,
it is.
We got the Jack the Ripper and Weston adventures, and I recently saw that one. I'm like, I don't know, honey, should we get it? But I don't know. We may have to now.
Yeah.
Because I know did they do the same thing with the reprint with the Jack the Ripper one, where they put like the solution in an envelope, and I love that. That is so cool.
Yeah, solutions in an envelope. But interestingly enough, I also found out this week, because of course I edited the text, I've edited all of the clue points, I edited what's printed on the letter inside of that envelope, but I didn't know what was going to be written on the envelope itself. And if you have a look at that envelope, it says
on the bottom, or
on the actual envelope itself.
All right, well, I'm pulling it off. Okay, it just says chapitre.
Yeah, it's French.
It's in French. Yeah. Okay.
So for the English version of the game, they didn't change what was printed on the envelope. But I'm not accepting any blame for that one, because I didn't see that.
You didn't have it. Well, and it's, I mean, honestly, like the English language borrowed that word from French. So
well, it's in a nice font. It's cursive.
It's in a nice font.
It does look really cool. Yeah. back in there. All right, yeah.
But it's interesting what you said, TC, because I get asked this a lot. I've got the Istari version of the game. Should I buy the new one? Obviously, that depends on how much disposable income you've got. It also depends on how many cases you've played from the old game. So how many cases have you played from the original Istari version?
We've been through case 8.
Okay, so you'd be buying it only to do the last 2 cases.
That, and I like your idea of going to game groups and running it. So it would be worth the, the expense. Yeah, that to have some of the corrections.
The font in this one is very much, it's incredibly legible, if I had to say.
Yep.
No,
and it gave me a chance to use British
very...
English as well, because 99% of the rule books that I edit all have to be in American English. So this one, obviously, because it's set in England, I was able to actually write in British English, which is unusual for me these days.
Wow.
That's
I'm able to spell things correctly.
Oh, yes, the colors of all the things. And, yes, the color of magic.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So, do you want to talk about some of the other Sherlock Holmes games?
Well,
we could talk. We could talk about that Carissa doesn't care for.
I'm gonna put the brakes on really quick because I just want a really quick explanation of what is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. What is this? How do you play it for people who've never played before?
We've been talking about it and we haven't actually played it. And interestingly enough, the new rule book, which is far better than the original rule book from the 80s, there's been a little bit of criticism online about the rule book because it kind of gives you the impression that you're trying to beat Holmes. You're not. This is a game where you should care about the score, but not care about the score.
I mean, the way that it's worded here seems fine. Like, as long as you solved it, you've won the game. It's like a blood game, right? If you score positive.
Yeah, the rule of thumb is if we get a positive number score on this game, we're doing well. That's how we do.
That's beyond well, man. If you figured out the case, even after reading, if you just took the entire case book, read it back to front, and were able to figure out the case, I still think that's a win.
Yeah. So what is the game in a nutshell, and how do you play it? The rules are very, very simple. You start a case, you get the newspaper of the day, you get the case introduction, and then you look at the map of London and you decide where to go. And literally, you could go to any of those locations on the map. You choose which one to go to, turn to that section of the book, read a little bit of text, close the book, and then choose somewhere else to go. Now, the trick with this game, I explain to people whenever I'm teaching them how to play, is you're not going to just go to a number of locations and then eventually you'll stumble across a location which says, congratulations, you've solved the case, well done. Nowhere you will go will tell you that. No. We'll give you narrative-based information, but nothing will tell you anything absolutely outright. And what you do is you make the notes and then you've got to make the connections yourself. Nothing will tell you to do that. You've got to go, oh, wait a minute. He said that he left at 7 o'clock in the morning. And we know that from the Central Carriage Stables that a cab picked us at 7:10. So did he have enough time to get there? Yes, he did. Where did he go? He went there. And that's where the murdered person was found. So it was probably him that did. You work that out yourself. But basically, you go to one location after another, reading bits of text. You decide when to stop. And this is one of the key parts of the game, is you decide when you've been to enough places, and only then do you turn to the questions. You don't know what the questions are going to be when you start playing. Probably one of the questions is who did it.
Yeah.
And if there's, it'll probably be why. But there'll be lots and lots of questions that at the start.
One of the things that I enjoyed too was it's just not the main murder. There's some secondary and tertiary mysteries to solve, and trying to catch those early on and then realize, oh wait, these aren't connected to what we're pursuing, but they are something we should keep an eye out for. On them. Exactly.
Because you never know. You never know. The questions are split into 2 parts. Part 1 is always about the main case, but then you have part 2, which are like these bonus questions. And they could be anything. as you're playing the game, you find out all of these other things that are going on. You're like, well, hang on a minute. This is nothing to do with the main case, but there may be a question on it. So let's, and that's for you to decide how far you want to pursue that. Now, the reason why I said earlier on, don't care about the score, but care about the score, is every location you go to will lose you 5 points.
Yeah.
If you play
only
thinking,
if Sherlock
we've got to
gone
score. Yeah, well, Sherlock does it in like 2 or 3 places.
And it's a complete butt.
Sherlock just
It tells you how he
divides
did it.
everything.
Isn't there one case he goes to like 3 places and we're like, no way, what? Oh, okay.
There's one case he does in 2, 3 points. Seriously, but don't think about that. Don't think, oh, we've been to 6 places. Every place we go is going to lose us 5 points. So you play it for about an hour, and then you get the questions because you didn't go to enough places. Don't play it like that. What we do when we're playing is we don't really care how many places we go to. We usually go to between 15 and 20, but we go to places until we think we've got a good enough idea of how it plays out. And as long as we've got 2/3 of the questions correct, we feel that we've done it correctly. If you then apply the scoring, we probably score anywhere. Well, if we score sort of between 30 and 40, we think we've done a good job. That for us is a good job.
Yeah, us too. And sometimes following the clues, we lose track or we've gone to the wrong places and we're not sure to pick up. And we just start throwing darts of let's go here, let's go there, let's see where we can pick it up again. And that can be great fun because sometimes some of the characters you run into are crazy fun. Yeah.
So that's how you play the game.
Basically, it's just as simple as Paul says. Like everything that you have at your disposal, this game does not come with normal components that you're used to seeing. Essentially, when you open up this box, it was a shock to me because like I was like, oh, it's a heavy box here at the Starry version, and it was a little bit crushed, and I was like, I wonder why it's crushed a little bit, and it's probably because it's heavy. And it only takes up about the top, the 2/3 of the box because essentially you've got what feels like a box is full of rule books.
Yes.
Like 12 different rule books.
Yeah.
And because each case book looks like a rule book, and then you've got like a fold-out map.
The London directory. We didn't mention the directory.
The directory, which
the directory is fantastic. Basically, if you get the name of somebody or the play or a business or whatever, you look it up in the directory. And that gives you the actual clue point of where you want to go. So, for example, if you overhear some, I'm trying not to give any spoilers away here, but if you are at one of the locations and you hear somebody in the next room and they mumble the name Alderton, you go, right, Alderton, we've got a name. You go to the directory, you look up the name Alderton, and you go, Alderton, there's 2 of them. One's at 13 Southwest and the other one's at 43 EC. Right. Well, let's go to both of them. And one of them will probably be some old guy that, one of those funny clue points where you're reading it and there's an old guy and somebody's stolen his cat and you're writing all of these notes down and then you think, hang on a minute. Just an old guy.
Not even related.
And then you go to the other one and it's the right one. So, yeah.
Oh, that is especially true when you're trying to parse information out of the newspapers. Oh, man, I love so much of it. I love them too, but so much of the information in these newspapers is like superfluous, like
90%
deaths.
And the newspapers are cumulative. So by case 8, you have 8 newspapers. We're just divvying them up. We're like, okay, you have these 2, you have these 2. Everybody, let's read through our newspapers first.
Which I think it's absolutely fantastic, and it's why people should play them in order. Because although the 10 cases from the original game, they are not connected. Those 10 cases are not connected in any way. They are all individual standalone cases. However, when you play case 1, which you get newspaper number 1, which is March 20th, 1888. See how many times I've played this game.
Oh my goodness!
Then you do case 2, which in the original version is July 4th, 1888.
They're all in 1888. Yes, September 1st.
Yeah, because they moved them around. You actually have access to the newspaper from case 1. And you might think, well, why is that relevant? Well, it might be. And then when you get to case 3 or case 4, somebody's name crops up in the case, and you're like, wait a minute, that name's familiar. Why is that name familiar? And you spend 5 or 10 minutes discussing with each other, and then eventually, and this is what I love about the game, somebody picks up the newspaper from like 3-4 months ago and goes, this guy's been in jail for robbery, and now he's just cropped up, and suddenly you know he's in jail. He was in jail for robbery. So what you do is you go to the jail and you end up speaking to his cellmate, who gives you some information about where he, and it's just fantastic. So there's hidden bits of information in the old newspapers which apply to the current cases. So by the time you've got to case 10, as you say, you're there and you've got these 10 newspapers, and new players are going, seriously, I've got to read through all of it. But if you're playing with the same players and you play them in a relatively short period of time, which we did when we were doing the West End Adventures, which is 6 cases, we did them all within 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it was very, very intensive. But that picking up bits of information from previous newspapers was a lot easier than if it had been 6 months between games.
Oh, yeah, that is tricky to have a long period of time between games and trying to catch up on all of the newspapers and remember what has already been used in the previous cases. But I agree, the newspapers really help make this game what it is.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So ultimately, the types of questions, one thing I noticed, and I don't remember if this was more, my most recent experience, aside from the 1/4 of a game of the Jack the Ripper case that I got into right before we were recording this. My most recent experience has actually been with Mythos Tales. So I'm not sure how much of Mythos Tales. Mythos Tales, totally unrelated. You had no involvement in the production of Mythos Tales, correct?
Nope.
So so my main thing is just a question. Some of the solution questions or the questions that you're asked in your final 2 different sets of questions.
Yep.
If I recall correctly, one of them is kind of like your main case, and the other one's kind of like, we're at least going to give you something for all that useless crap you went off studying. And that's basically, you at least do get some sort of reward for all, for the negative 30 points you got figuring out that the old man's cat was.
Sometimes you don't. But sometimes you don't.
That's correct.
And sometimes you'll get a question from part 2, which is like, what is the meaning of the symbols on the side of the book? And you're like, what book?
There was a book. You missed something.
There was once or twice
Sometimes you will miss it.
There was once or twice when, our knowledge, or probably my knowledge of Sherlock Holmes, the stories came in where we're like, we didn't encounter this at all. And I'm like, it's this. Trust me, it's this. And it was. But that's rare.
Toby the dog?
Yeah, Toby.
Yeah, Toby.
We didn't find the dog at all. It's like, it's got to be Toby. Just write the name down.
We don't know. It's got to be Toby.
Yeah.
I'm going to go grab a couple of things really quick, guys. Keep going. I'm going to go grab a couple of things just my 2 other games. I'm going to grab Mythos Tales so I can kind of show what that looks like here on YouTube. Anyway, you guys keep her going.
Well, I'll tell people what I know about Mythos Tales while he's gone. So Mythos Tales actually started off as a 1-case fan-based scenario called, I can't remember now, Arkham something or other. And it was released on BGG as I say, it was just a 1-case thing. And it was in the style of Sherlock Holmes, but in a Cthulhu setting. For quite some time, years, I think. And then eventually somebody realized, oh, this is quite a good idea. Let's actually take that case, more cases, and let's turn it into a full game, which ended up being Mythos Tales, which was a successful Kickstarter. Now, out the Kickstarter at the time, I probably would have backed it, just because I quite like Cthulhu Mythos and obviously the Sherlock Holmes detective. I don't Kickstarter that much, and I missed it and it passed me by. Now that the game has actually gone on to backers, back it, because apparently it's full of game-breaking errors. So things that are actually wrong, making the first case completely unplayable. Now, I might be being a bit harsh here. I've not played it. This is what I've heard from other people. I also know somebody who was involved in doing something similar to what I did. So he got copies of it, electronic format, before the game went to print, found a number of things that were wrong with it, like a missing building on a map, which you had to find because it was important, but it wasn't on the map. Really important things like that. Fed that information back to the publisher. It never made it into the final version.
No, that's unfortunate.
That, for me, as a professional editor and whatever, although it might seem that I'm criticizing another publisher, which I effectively am, but that's shocking. That's unforgivable when somebody who's working with you on the project feeds back all of this information, which is absolutely critical, and you don't include it in the game before it goes to print. That's either you're lazy and you didn't do it, or the game had already gone to print and you're like, oh, the game's already gone to print, oops. But if they ever do a new version with all of that fixed, then I would look into it. There is a whole load of stuff on BGG, there's a whole load of errata that you can fix your copy of the game, but my view is, why should I support them when they've made a mess of it? Also, if they do a good job with it, then I'll support them if they decide to fix it. But yeah, so I've not played the game myself. I was really excited about it, and I was almost going to buy it, and then I heard all of the negative feedback, which is a shame. So yeah, while he's gone, have you got the Jack the Ripper and the West End Adventures?
Okay, guys.
Yeah, we have it.
So, Mythos Tales. I've been saying how bad it was.
Yeah, I know. I actually have been listening. I accidentally had my mic turned off, so I was like, man, Paul just keeps talking over me. And then finally, when you made that comment there, that's like whenever he gets back, and I was like, oh, so
that's why. So I'll let you talk now.
Well, I'm just holding Mythos Tales right here, and here's usually, and I don't know if there's anybody else in the world that's like me like this. I compare Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective to like one of those old adventure point-and-click games where you're trying to find a very specific solution, like what was Maniac Mansion? Data Tentacle. I've never played that.
Curse of Monkey Island.
Curse of Monkey Island I have played. And the way that it usually goes is I'm entertained for about the first 10 minutes when everything is pretty obvious. And then as soon as I'm started to ask to actually make like deductions and observations beyond just like, this is funny here, listen to it. I'm like so thick-headed I can't do it. I'm like, go straight to the walkthrough. And I give myself a little bit of time and I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. So my experience with Mythos Tales, because what you said is basically that some of the things essentially that were wrong with the first Astari edition of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective kind of sound like they were present in this first version of Mythos Tales. And I would say that since when I play this game or even Sherlock Holmes, usually I end up about 5 to 10 journal entries I'm actually playing the game. Okay. And then after that point, I start being like entertained enough by just all the different passages. And I don't want to have to choose between following this thread because then I would forget about this thread and then I'd have to remember it. So I'm just like, you know what? We'll just read this one. We're just going to enjoy this one. So with Mythos Tales, I think I've done 3 of the cases, and I at least had at least a pretty decent knowledge. Like I was able to, after I thought it was the first one, I was able to look back, and the thing that I didn't know was because I didn't make a Cthulhu-related deduction, without giving any spoilers. But that sounded really cool to me later on. However, Paul, it sounds to me like you've basically gone into the new version as well as your work with the Jack the Ripper and West End and made it so that those types of maybe leaps of logic that are especially informed by somebody's prior knowledge of Toby or just in general, like, the way I think about it is a lot of these adventure games will be the person that wrote them will have a very specific like train of thought. And if you are writing that, it is perfect. But a lot of times there's so many things within the story that are designed almost to try to, kick you off of it. And if you lose the specific train of thought that they are on, like you are hopeless to being able to figure these things out. But it sounds like you've gone and kind of done some work on making it so that that isn't the case.
a little bit where I could, and not all of my suggestions were accepted. But on Mythos Tales, there was something somebody told me, I think this week or last week, about it. It may have even been you. I can't remember. But one of the reasons why they felt Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective worked better as a game is it's real. It's in London in Victorian era. Things happen within the boundaries of reality.
Mm-hmm.
You can use that knowledge of how the world works to help make your deductions. With Mythos Tales, Cthulhu's involved. So stuff happens that is out of this world. People can potentially walk through walls, or there's weird monsters or whatever, whereas you wouldn't have that in a Sherlock Holmes game. And they said that felt, for them, it made it harder for them to understand what the boundaries of reality was, and therefore making deductions was more difficult.
Sure, yeah, I understand that. Here is one thing I would say in Mythos Tales' defense, because I do agree that, like, I would say that what it makes it is, if you're like, I've read the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft and many of it multiple times. So like the boundaries of reality, at least in that aspect, felt to me comfortable. But then again, I've read them very recently. What Mythos Tales does that I find really interesting is in your final score, you actually are deducted points for being for having visited certain locations.
Okay.
Because it's like you're losing your sanity by going there. Like you visiting that spot was you like you reading that specific book, you started to feel like a headache and like these dancing visions of people dancing around a fire in your head, and then, it'll be something like that. But to me, that was like there is real H.P. Lovecraft, because all this, and we have TC here who's a big fan, and he's this gonna hurt you, TC. It's gonna hurt you.
It's okay. I'm used to being hurt.
It's good. But you go like Arkham Horror is like, let's go get a gigantic arsenal of stuff and then go kill it. It's like, no, that's not H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft is like, we're going to slow roll this entire mystery until the ultimate, in the denouement of it, it's like, and then he went insane. The end. That's it. It's like he didn't even have a chance. He never even attempted to like kill the darkness. That's so rare in H.P. Lovecraft's work. And to me, like, the fact that you literally are like, if you're playing this game for points in Mythos Tales, you are like, you're going to lose points for essentially confronting anything evil. You're actually actively avoiding it if you're playing within the spirit of the game.
Okay.
That makes a great deal of sense coming from a Lovecraft point of view.
Yes, thank you. And the other thing that I thought was just like, Sherlock Holmes doesn't provide like this sort of a tracker. So in Sherlock Holmes, you're supposed to keep track of how many days you spend and stuff. And especially I noticed in the Jack the Ripper, they have, you're only allowed 15 visits.
In the first case, yes.
In the first case. So like I literally, what I did is I made on my notes, and I was just showing my notes before, I made like, I numbered 15, 14, 13, all the way down to 1. And then each time I visit a place, that way I just have to cross it out. So I don't like forget like, how many have I visited now?
Yeah. Now that was an interesting one, because when we were doing it, I queried that. And I think I might have got them to up it from 10 to 15. I can't remember. But I queried why that was in there. And because I didn't think it should be in there at all.
Sure.
And they explained why it was in there, and I was like, okay, I can now see why it's in there. So if we're gonna drift on to the Jack the Ripper and the West End Adventures.
Yeah, I didn't mean to like, but yeah, I think drifting on there's a good idea.
So moving on to that, this is one of the most confusing things that they've ever done, is they released that first, and on the side it's got a number 3. So that's box 3. And that's the first one that they released. Okay. Now, if you look at the number on the side of the box of the Thames Murders and West and other stories or other whatever, that's got a number 1 on the side. So they released
where's number 2?
Exactly, number 2's coming. So they released box 3 first, then they released box 1, and then 2 will be coming soon.
Yes, I see it.
When I saw the West End Adventures, I was confused. I was like, was this the reprint of the original, or is this new stuff? And I had to like actually look through it, and I found out it was the new stuff.
Yeah. No. It's the reprint of the original. So in 1995, the last expansion set for the original game came out, which was West End Adventures, and it contains 6 cases. And those cases are now part of the Jack the Ripper and West End Adventures, but they've been heavily modified. So in the original 1995 version, there was way too much text. There was so much text and there was so many things, and it was too bloated. So what Space Cowboys did is they took those 6 cases and they've reworked them, and they changed a few of them, and they changed lots of details, and then they gave it to me to obviously edit and test and things like that. Mm-hmm. But yes, so the 6 cases in the West End Adventures, in the Jack the Ripper and West End Adventures, were the original ones from 1995, but reworked. But then what they did is they decided to put in the Jack the Ripper ones, which are 4 cases. So what you've got is you've got 10 cases in that box, but it's 2 completely separate games.
Yeah.
There's the Jack the Ripper cases, which is cases 1 to 4. That's its standalone thing. And then you've got the West End Adventures, which is cases 5 to 10, which is, again, a completely separate standalone thing. But you should do 5 to 10 in order, and you should do 1 to 4 in order.
Oh, you're like required to do 1 to 4 in order, right? It's like
you've got to do 1 to 4 in order, but because of the newspapers, you should also do 5 to 10 in order. And what's different about 5 to 10 is, whereas the original 10 cases span a period of 2.5 years, I think, those 6 cases in the West End Adventures span a period of like 6 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, so they are really all close to each other. Yeah.
Nice.
They're all really close together. So the stuff in the newspaper is, oh, you remember that body we? Well, it's now been identified as. So there's a lot more connection of things in the newspaper over the past ones. But yeah, it's interesting that they decided to include. See why they did it from a production point of view. It's so that there's 10 cases in the box. But also, otherwise, they would have had to release the Jack the Ripper ones as just 4 cases in a little box on its own. And that would have been a bit odd. So, yeah, I can see why they did that.
So
go ahead, Carissa.
A question about the Jack the Ripper, because this was my only hesitation about the game. Because I've done some study into Jack the Ripper and that case, not extensive by any stretch of the imagination, but enough to feel familiar with it. How much is my familiarity with that case going to impact my playing the game?
It might make you enjoy it more, and it might. I don't know whether it might spoil anything. It might spoil something. Now, I've been fairly. I try to keep my opinions on games which I've been professionally involved in to myself. Because if I edit a rule book of a game and then I go online and say, "Oh, the game's absolutely awful, I'd never play it," then the publisher is unlikely to want to hire me again.
Exactly.
But with respect to the Jack the Ripper cases, they are very, very different. The style of the game, the tone of the game, the way that the game even plays is so different that what I say to people is, if you have not played the original 10 cases, then play cases 5 to 10 first. And it even tells you in the rule book to play cases 5 to 10.
Yeah, it does say that.
But because what I was worried about is somebody buying that game, playing case 1, and then thinking, this was awful, I didn't enjoy this experience, the whole Sherlock Holmes game and all cases are terrible. They're not. So it's so different. I know a number of people that really, really did not enjoy it, just because it's so different. In the original 10 cases, you go to clue points, and because it's a self-contained case, you will go to clue points and you will pick up all of these bits of information and you'll piece together that information and you will hopefully try to solve the case. Is very authentic. So there's 2 reasons why it doesn't work as well as a game. Way that a lot of the things that you will find in the game are things that actually happened. And for those people who don't know about Jack the Ripper, the real Jack the Ripper, spoiler, they never found him, despite years of investigation.
And the Titanic sunk too. And now you're going to tell me.
Yeah. Now, if you're going to transfer that into a game, decide yourself, right, we'll say that this person is Jack the Ripper, and we'll give the players all of the clues to find who it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what they've done is they've tried to recreate how it would have been to be, you know, working for the police or whatever at that time, and getting misleading information from everybody you speak to that completely contradicts everything else.
Ooh.
And you will end up going to clue point after clue point after clue point and finding all of this information, and you're writing it all down and you're making dozens and dozens of notes, and most of it's completely and utterly irrelevant, and it's frustrating, and it took us hours. And then I thought, well, actually, that's exactly how I'm investigating this case at the time. So they've managed to recreate that feeling, but as a game, we were going to clue point after clue point, and we were just getting absolutely nowhere. And then that's day one. And then you're like,
now you've got to do day 2, 3, and 4.
Now you got to do
based
day 2
on the stuff you found on day 1.
Possibly, yeah. Now, as I say, we didn't know really anything about the Sherlock Holmes, about the Jack the Ripper. After we'd played through those 4 cases, we then started looking up lots and lots of information about Jack the Ripper on the Jack the Ripper Wikipedia, and loads of stuff. And we started reading real details about real things that happened, which matched the things that we went to in the game. So one of the locations we went to in the game, which was an absolute key location, we then start reading about that location in real life and seeing photographs of the backyard of that location in real life. And we're like, oh my God, you know, we've been there in the game, and we did that in the game. And that was actually the place. And the details that they've used, they have managed to recreate it. And all of Sherlock Holmes is all fictional. And suddenly, this is not fictional. Suddenly, this was real. This is something that actually happened. And it gave me certainly a feeling afterwards of, I don't know, it made me feel really uncomfortable, because it wasn't nice. And all of a sudden, it brought it all home. It was a bit weird. I
think any game, especially a game that is centered around Jack the Ripper, should make you feel uncomfortable, because it's a brutal crime.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's Letters of Whitechapel, which is just, and there's Mr. Jack. There's other games in the Jack the Ripper, you know, setting, which are just games. But when you're reading all of this text about things, and you're reading police reports, and then I go onto the Wikipedia, and I find what they've done is they've actually taken, so a lot of the text in the game is real text from real police reports. And I need to also mention, somebody asked me, they said, how is the graphic descriptions in the game of some of the things that you will find? It's very graphic. They've used real medical examiners' reports. And I don't know whether I'm a particularly squeamish person or not. Times when we were playing this game and I was reading it out, and Vicky, my partner, she was doing all the writing down, I had to stop reading. It was making it physically sick.
From the rule book, which Paul had a part in editing, the descriptions and the facts may harm the sensibilities of younger players. Like we've mentioned, Paul's only 27. We therefore suggest you do not play this campaign with children.
Absolutely not. I mean, the subject matter alone is, you know, if they start asking questions about it, you're like, yeah. And then you go to these clue points, and I mean, it's a horrible, horrible time. People, you know, women at that time were having to, you know, prostitute themselves just to get a penny to pay for a room for a night. Otherwise, they were on the street. And people, there was violence, and it was just, it was a horrible, horrible time. And obviously, what Jack the Ripper did, and how he did it. And then you go to a location and you're reading this, and I'm like, right, yeah. So it's very, very graphic. I think a negative picture about it, but there are people I know that have played these cases and really enjoyed them.
I would say that you've interested me by what you've said, because obviously I just started the Jack the Ripper thing, so I hadn't really gotten into that. I just had made a few notes on a couple of leads, and nothing was graphic yet. But one of my favorite movies is the Johnny Depp movie From Hell.
From Hell, yeah.
Yeah, and it is just, to me, like, here's the thing. Like, you mentioned Letters from Whitechapel. I think Letters from Whitechapel is like an excellent game. Maybe someday we'll have a long view about it. But every expansion, every time they've tried to expand Letters from Whitechapel, they've all tried to do it based on, like, you know, especially the most recent one. It was like essentially added a deck of cards that were all these possible suspects and the women that were murdered, and everything that they did seemed to like interrupt the flow of that game that you mentioned. You know,
Right.
like, this is a good game, it's a good flow of a game, and everything in that, like, just to me seemed like distractions from that central game. Whereas here, like, everything is just baked right into those cupcakes I'm going to mail you.
Yeah. So you're playing through case 1 of the Jack the Ripper cases. Just be prepared to go to lots and lots of places and not learn anything.
Okay.
The reason why
15.
the reason why we didn't stop at 15 and we ignored that instruction and we carried on is by 15 we knew nothing. We didn't know. We felt we didn't know anything. We were just wandering around from place to place, following one lead after another, speaking to lots and lots of people, and we were like, well, it doesn't matter what the questions are going to be because we don't know anything.
Yeah.
So we carried on playing it, and we went to in the first case of the Jack the Ripper, we went to probably 25, maybe even 30 clue points, just because we felt, and even after that, when we got the questions, we were like, oh, okay, I still don't know the answer to that one. Now, bearing in mind, I was playing the version before I edited it.
Okay.
And there were a couple of points where what was written didn't make sense. We couldn't picture it in our mind because of the translation issue or whatever. So I ended up having to then ask them to describe this to me in more detail, you know, specifically without giving too many spoilers away, the way that where the body was found and the position that it was in. The wording that was used in the version that I got sent didn't make sense. I couldn't picture whether it was lying down, propped up against the wall, hanging from the rafter. You know, the wording was such that it was very, very ambiguous. So I basically, part of the editing job I did was reword that whole paragraph clearer as to where the body was, because that's quite an important thing.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds like, I'm just so happy that they had you come in and do that to these cases. Like, if you have a choice, you know, if you've got the old game, and like you were mentioning, if you got the old game and you've only played, like, I've only played, I want to say up to case 3 of the Starry version. Like, I'm pretty much convinced at this point that I need to get the new version because I don't want to have to deal with it. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, it's, of course, and what you said there, Paul, about being able to run this for your group, like, that's like, you know, that's another level of this, you know, being able to make like different groups and each group has their own, you know, they're kind of competing with each other. You're almost adding a competitive aspect to the game, well, maybe.
Yeah. Now this is the thing. If you're playing on your own, you do it and you add up the scores at the end and you knock off your points for the locations you've been to and you get 35 and you go, yay us. And that's it. You're not trying to beat anybody. So it works. It's like playing poker for matchsticks. Now play poker for money. Even if it's just $1 or $2 or whatever. It's the same game, but all of a sudden it feels different. So when I've run this for 2 or 3 groups and they're all in my house in different rooms and they're sitting there going, right, well, let's go to the chemist. And then somebody will say, well, hang on a minute. Do we need to go to the chemist? We already know the murderer used such and such an acid. And we already know that he lives round the corner from this particular chemist. And we already found a receipt from that chemist for the things made that he used. So if we go to the chemist, we will confirm that, but it'll cost us 5 points.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't, when I'm playing it on my own, I would like, look, I don't care about the 5 points. Let's go there just to confirm it. But suddenly, when you're playing against other people, you have these, do we really need to do it? And it just makes the game, as I say, it raises it a little bit and it becomes this competitive game between the different groups. You've no idea how they're all doing, but but you know, I've run it many times for multiple groups with that, and it's been nice to see that there has been a level of competition there, and it makes people go to fewer locations and make little bit more leaps of faith.
One of the things that I started doing, anticipating that we may not keep our copy because we've played through all the cases, is after, I didn't think about it for case 1, but every case thereafter, on the page that has the answers, I write our score at the bottom.
Yep.
So that way anybody else who gets the game, when they get there, they can compare how well they did versus how well we did.
So it's like you've got Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes' score is 100. You're never getting that. But we can beat these people.
Yeah.
Just you mentioned that there's going to be a second box set of this. That's got me very intrigued. What
number
is
2?
That? Yeah, what's that going to be?
Box number 2. So I'm not officially allowed to say.
Yep.
But what I can talk about is I can talk about the expansions for the original game. So the original game came out, whatever, 81, 82, 83, I can't remember. The first expansion that came out for it was called the Mansion Murders. And it was a set of, I think it was 10 cases. And on the London map, if you look at 100 Southwest, in the bottom left corner, it's a big rectangular building. That became a mansion. So as well as the map of London, you also had these floor plans of a mansion, which were numbered. So now you can go to locations in London, and you can also go to rooms of the mansion. Okay? So it's the same game, but there's the 2 locations for every case. So that was the Mansion Murders. Space Cowboys might be doing the Mansion Murders. They might be redoing the Mansion Murders. That may or may
they could
not
also
be
not.
That may or may not be box 2. There was another 2 expansions as well that came out for the original game. Fair. And there's another one, if somebody can Google it or look it up on Board Game Geek, because I can't remember. Queen's Park Affair, and there was another one. Both of these 2 were very unusual in that they were one big case, but it was split over 5 days or something like that. Or 5, and you had to play them in order, and you had to play them fairly close together because it was all one big connected story. And we've played, I remember playing these probably when I was 16, 17, something like that. And one of them we played through, and we got to day 3 or day 4, and then we gave up because we had absolutely no idea what was going on. One of them we ended up in Paris, and we couldn't put anything together whatsoever. I think we got to the questions at the end, but because we'd lost the plot, you know, halfway in, we'd no idea what we were doing, and we were just completely bewildered. And then the other one, that I can't remember the name of, we got to like day 2, and we gave up because we were completely bewildered and had no idea what we're doing. I'm hoping that they redo those cases, because I would absolutely love to just put a weekend aside
to work
and do it. And because I'm sure they'd be fantastic if I did it. But, you know, I'm not the most intelligent person. I could never play this game solo. I rely on the other people near me to do all the clever stuff. But playing those you know, the amount of time that we'd invest in it, hopefully for a decent reward would be excellent. So yeah, who knows? But future boxes are probably going to contain, and there is new cases being developed as well. I've been told that there's new cases being developed. So yeah, it's exciting.
So Paul, you mentioned a point that I don't think we've talked about is the number of players that you can have with Consulting Detective, and you can play it solo. But again, that would be so difficult because part of the enjoyment of the game is the interaction with your group. And we played it on my birthday, last year, I think. And just moved the party to the table. And I said, this is what I want to do. And there were like 9 or 10 of us. And it was a great deal of fun. And I think it was case 6 that had the puzzles in it.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, thank goodness, was an engineer, and for some reason he is very good at puzzles. And we would have never solved that. Yes, we would have never solved that without him.
No. So I think any more than 4, I would not recommend. Now, if you played with 9 and it worked fine, it's great. But more than 4 for me is the too many cooks. One person will have nothing to do or won't be able to contribute.
There's only so many pieces of paper that you can have in different people's hands, you know, like and getting the rule book, getting the back of the rule book with all the people you can talk to, that just doesn't quite feel the same, you know. It's not the same as the newspaper, the rule, you know, the map.
Yeah, I think most of the times we play are 4 to 5. 9, we played that game for probably 3 hours because we'd get so yeah, that was kind of a one shot to see how it works.
Another thing I would advise is that certainly when I was playing it with Vicky, we got into the routine of Vicky would do the directory and Vicky would make the notes and I would read out. Newspapers, make sure you pass them around. Make sure everybody looks at the newspaper because different people will see different things. And my most memorable gaming moment of 2016 in the whole year was one of the Sherlock Holmes cases. And it was one of the ones from the West End Adventures. And I won't say which one.
Ooh. I can't wait.
But in that, where we were completely confused by what was going on and couldn't make any connection between things that were going on, and I'm trying not to give spoilers away. And then Vicky got the newspaper, and it might have even been the newspaper from a previous one, not the one from the case that it was actually at.
Maybe we can't.
Looked at it, showed it to me, showed me what was on it, and I was like, wow. And not only was it because she got it, and that was just amazing, so cleverly done.
Yeah. That is. The types
you
of
get
puzzles.
To it, tell me.
Okay, I will. Yeah. The types of puzzles that you're mentioning, though, like that, therein lies like, it's like any great story, like any great game, or like any great video game that has a narrative to it usually has like some sort of a hook to it, and that sort of puzzle that you're mentioning is, it's present, and it's present in so many of these. It's like, because these are not just all one person's, they're not all just one person doing all the writing here. You've got essentially, like, it almost feels like a greatest hits of a Sherlock Holmes anthology that's been turned into a puzzle, a logic or crossword puzzle. But, that with it having, instead of it being, like your normal logic puzzle you're used to seeing, it's just everything is so, it's almost like an adult coloring book turned into to a logic puzzle, because it's so detailed and there's so much there and so much going on, and there's elements of it that are just there to look pretty, but they all help to immerse you into this Victorian England. Like you said, they ground you in Victorian England.
They capture the atmosphere. And one thing for anybody who's listening to this podcast who hasn't played this game, I mentioned earlier on, you're never going to go to a clue point and it'll say, congratulations, you've solved the case. But also, you're not going to give them clue. There is going to be a yellow highlighter around something that says, this is a clue. Write this down. It's important. It's not going to be like that. It's all a narrative. So you're reading this narrative and you might dismiss a piece of information thinking it's just, oh yeah, I've walked into a room, he's telling us about the colour of the wallpaper, whatever. And somewhere later on, the colour of that wallpaper is actually important. So you will find clues, I'm using the term buried, but I don't mean it in a negative way, within narrative. And you've got to work out, when you're reading it, what's important and what's not. And that it's really, but yeah, when the cleverness of some of the cases, and when you piece together those bits of information, it's like when you get, that point in a story where you go, that's a brilliant idea. When you're playing an escape room game, somebody has spent time in creating that puzzle for you to experience and you to solve. And I have, the utmost appreciation for the time that they put in creating that puzzle for us to then be able to solve it, to have that amazing moment. So,
and I would add an utmost appreciation to individuals like you, Paul, who are taking that and trying to make sure that that is the focus of people's experience with the game.
Yeah.
There's really not quite a moment like when you're playing Sherlock Holmes and one person has that one insight and the whole table just goes, "Oh my God, are you serious?" And it just completely, those are the most wonderful moments in gaming.
You feel amazing.
Also,
go ahead.
You also get those moments, and every group's got one of these, where somebody goes, I've got it. It's such and such and such a thing. And everybody looks at them and like, what the hell are you on about? Because one of the Sherlock Holmes things is you never create a solution to fit the facts. And or what's that phrase? You know the phrase. So.
When you separate everything that it can't be, you'll be left with the truth, right?
Something like exactly. But you get people going, well, I think it was this person who did it. Well, why do you think that? Well, because we know the murderer had red shoes and we saw him have red shoes. Yeah, but we also know the murderer was 6'4", and this guy
he's a midget.
Yeah, and it's like what they try to do. They focus on one thing, and then they forget all of the other facts, which actually mean that it can't be that person. And it's, you've got to, you get that. Vicky's dad was always doing this when we played it. We only played it twice with him, but he focused on something, and then he changed the other facts in order to fit his theory. And he's like, no. If those facts are actual facts, then your theory is unfortunately wrong. So forget about it and move on, and we need to find another theory. So
we need to go talk to Mycroft now. Maybe he'll tell us some.
Yes. Yeah.
We had a question here that we can answer. I think we specifically what they call the base game right now is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective: The Times Murders and Other Cases. That's the base
Thames
game.
Murders, yes, and it's box 1. Mm-hmm. Yeah, box 1. That's the base game.
And then the only thing that's been released so far from Space Cowboys, which it sounds to me like if you're wanting to really enjoy this experience without any unnecessary distractions or frustrations, this is a product that's working. And I can say that those frustrations are widely known and widely accepted. So I know, Paul, with your involvement in the game, it's not just coming from that. It's like this. I've not played enough to say like whether or not Paul fixes it, but from what you've made it sound like, you've done quite a bang up job, right? By the end of this, I'm going to say everything just like you. Anyway, the number 3, which is actually the second one released here, is the Jack the Ripper and West End Adventures, and that's all that's been released from Space Cowboys right now, right?
Yes, box 1 and box 3, but in the UK, box 3 came out 4 months before box 1.
Yeah, but we got our box. I saw box 3 before I saw a box run at our game store.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right. I did have another question, and it's something we haven't talked about, but to me it feels extremely relevant, relatable. Have you heard of or played Watson and Holmes at all, Paul? Have you got any?
Who's the publisher of that?
It is, well, there's more than one. One of them is by just Asmodee, I think. I think they just go straight Asmodee.
Yeah.
And this one is Ludanova, though.
Yes. So if you were to have the new version of the game, you will see my name on that one.
Okay, so you actually did take, essentially you took what I've got right here. You took what I've got right here, and you edited it. Okay, so is this one then filled with
typos?
Okay, fix the typos. So far I've played 5 of the 13 here. Would you say, if on a scale of 0 to 10 here, with 10 being like totally unplayable, like Sherlock Holmes, the original case number 3. And a 1 being like a typo that you immediately know the difference of. Where about is my version here?
Well, you've played 5 of them. What would you say?
I don't feel like I'm having a problem with it. Like I've noticed
I would say probably 1 or 2, maybe.
Okay.
It was minor stuff that I fixed. But I also did editing work on the new rule book for it, because I think the original rule book, there was some confusion.
It's way too long too. Yeah, the rule book itself, like when I actually teach people this, I'm like, there's just it's way longer than it needed to be. And
there was confusion over the Watson card and how that works.
Yeah.
Just
you don't know when does it actually count as being your turn. Yeah, there is some confusion. I'm glad that you cleared that up. But
pop online
the way
and
that
get
it goes from
the rule book for the new version. But Watson and Holmes, for anybody who wants to know, and I need to be going in about 5 minutes because people are going to be arriving soon. But Watson and Holmes is a completely different game. It's a competitive game for, what's it advertised as? 3 to 7 players?
2 to 7, I believe.
2 to 7. I would only play it with 5 to 7. I don't think it works that well with less than 5, maybe 4. But it's a competitive game. It has 13 cases in the game. Each game will take you, rather than 3 hours or even 4, will probably take you about 45 minutes to 1 hour to play. And they are much simpler cases. And there's only a dozen clue points that you can go to. And each clue point has a couple of paragraphs of text rather than an entire page of A4 of text, which some of the Sherlock Holmes ones have. But the cases are good. They're interesting. I've played, I think, 3 of them myself before I then, did the editing stuff on it. And it's a completely different experience. But it's, it's a good game. It's working out, as you say, the connections in the cases and trying to piece together the puzzle. But in that one, it's a little like Cluedo, in that when one player chooses to go to Sherlock Holmes, then they read the questions, they answer the questions on a piece of paper, then they read the answers, and if they're right, they win the game. If they're wrong, they lose the game.
Ooh,
and then they just sit there waiting for other people. And the first person to go to Sherlock Holmes and answer the questions correctly wins the game. So, yeah. But yeah, highly recommended. It's just a very, very different style of game.
Yeah, I would say that if you like Sherlock Holmes but don't exactly have the patience, it sounds to me like you've almost taken the competitive aspects here somewhat, and made it so that the stakes are higher and groups can compete with one another with what you do with kind of being the game master for several different groups that are playing. Here, I specifically find that I do the same thing here that I do with regular Sherlock Holmes, which is I find the writing is of such a high caliber that I get to the point where I just kind of want to solve the case and be right or be wrong. But I'll just at that point, I can just kind of start picking up cards and reading them while everybody else keeps playing. And I am very here's what I think is really cool about this one is that while you've got 12 or 13 cards out there, there's almost always multiple ways to deduce the same bit of information, because and it's not just like this paragraph is printed here and here. No, it's like you'll find out this bit of information from here, you'll find out this bit of information from here. Kind of like what you mentioned there, where you had the people arguing about the chemists, the chemist in your example. Like you might figure out some of that information, but not this, and you've got two people both concluding that the chemist does this, but they're finding it from two different totally different ways. And I really do appreciate that, and I think it makes it work. However, like any game where a puzzle's at its center, like Alchemists, great game, which I'm sure you had some sort of involvement there, right?
Yep.
Great game, but man, you can turn over a card that you thought was going to have a Bible's worth of text and every solution. You're going to find out that this is the answer, and you turn it over, and it's nothing. just nothing. Like the designer should have almost just put they should have had what do they call it in that let's make a deal,
a whammy. You need a whammy.
A whammy, whatever So but yeah, I'd say that the version that I have I didn't think was much of a problem, but I'm glad to hear that they did enlist your help for making the new version, because they did make this version this was $40 list price or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And they made that bigger box without doing any changes in artwork, because there's quite a bit of artwork here, make it cost quite a bit more.
Yeah. So the work that I did on that was sort of more like proofing the text. Whereas with the Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, I sat down, I played through every case, I then read through every point and tried to make sure everything linked up. I did far more than what a normal editing would be. On the Watson and Holmes, it was just the editing. It was just reading the text, correcting the spelling and the typos, and maybe rewording a couple of sentences that weren't totally clear. Because I'd been told that the cases all work. It was just minor edits needed. So yeah, I never actually fully played through them all.
Okay, cool. Well, geez, Paul, it feels like you're just at the center here of so many games. Like if I were to make a list of my favorite games, I feel like you'd be behind, somewhere involved in the process of many of them. And I especially love the way that you're taking your love for this game that's been something that's been close to your since the beginning of your involvement in the gaming hobby as a young teenager, and you've been sharing that experience with people, and then eventually got to the point where you could work, literally get paid to do the same thing that you did for groups upon groups of people, and do that now for everybody that gets to play the game. So really cool story.
Yes, thank you very much for editing Sherlock Holmes. That's amazing. Very heartfelt. Thank you for me and for my wife as well.
Well, it's funny because I was at a gaming convention last weekend or the weekend before. A friend of mine who I've known for probably 3 years now or so, he quite often asks me for my opinion on games because I know quite a bit about games. And he came to me and he said, "Have you heard of a game called Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective? I'm thinking of it. Do you know anything about it?" And I was like, "Come over here and sit down and let me tell you about what I know." He had absolutely no idea of which, to be fair, nobody does. I don't have it, stamped on my forehead or anything like that. So anyway, it's 7:30 here in the UK. I'm going to have to disappear because I can actually hear people arriving downstairs and coming in. But it has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules. It has been an absolute pleasure. And yes, thanks, Carissa. Also, you provided some amazing insights here with your love for the game and interesting creative writing suggestions. And
thank you.
And whenever you get round to doing the other cases, I would love to hear from you. So drop me an email or a geek mail or something like that and say, "Oh, we just did case 9 and whatever." I just love hearing other people's experience with these cases and, how you got on with them. So
excellent. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to hang up now. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
I'll see you later on.
See you, Paul. Thanks for joining us. And that was Paul Grogan of Gaming Rules. And he does a lot of work with a lot of some of my favorite games. And man, I couldn't believe it when he said that he actually was involved in Watson and Holmes. I was like, you got to be kidding me! I thought I was actually going to have something.
You just talked about that one a few days ago.
I did actually. It was last night. Yeah, I put that together partially because I was trying to kind of prep for what we were doing today, and this went through my my in-laws. My mother-in-law is a real big logic puzzle fan. Like she does like those Kens in the paper, knows all the ones from the New York Times, and she's a big fan of Sherlock Holmes. This was like wildfire. Like we were talking 3 nights consecutively. This game got played. That's never happened. That's never happened in her family. That's never happened with her ever. So I think it's because it does. This, like you guys mentioned, many of the Sherlock Holmes episodes or the Sherlock Holmes cases can be amazing when they click, but you can kind of feel, especially like old case number 3, which
poor old case 3.
Oh man.
Poor old case number 3. Yeah, it sounds like you were about ready to just surge in that one up, Carissa. And
well, my main frustration with it, I mean, it would have been frustrating anyway, is we had 2 new players to the game, and here we are playing the broken game. It was embarrassing, really, because we were going on, "Oh, this is such a great game, and we're gonna have so much fun," and we were ending it banging our heads against the table. So.
Yeah, you were pretty frustrated about that whole thing.
Oh yeah, I think that the table next to us, I don't know what you guys were playing, but we were like, "What?
Yeah.
This makes no sense." Yeah, we were hot.
Yeah, that makes I'd be very frustrated as well. Fortunately, I was able to figure out how broken case 3 was pretty much reading it alone, like I do all of these, because there's just really, I find them really entertaining. Like my wife sometimes tries to play them with me, and it'll get to the point where I'm just staring at this page and I'm just reading it down, and she's like, "So what's it say?" And I'm like, Nah.
It's really hard being the reader. I have to blank out the other clues, so I'm not reading through them because flip through the book here. Nope. Gonna set it down. But yeah, I think after we finish case 10, I'm gonna go back and reread them all the way through.
They're so good. They really are. I mean, they're like, to me, this is one of the most intriguing ways to add theme into a narrative experience, and it definitely leans towards the narrative experience, but I think that's its main strength.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while we get a chance, we're talking about Sherlock Holmes games. We're going to talk about Studying Emerald and how much you really enjoyed it.
No. My problem with Studying Emerald, it was TC gets this game and he goes, "Look, honey, it's a Sherlock Holmes game, but it's different." And I was like, "Okay, let's play it." And it's not. It's the theme is totally different, and I like Arkham and Cthulhu, but I was not expecting that level of difference, and so I haven't played it since.
It really is not. It's not a game. It's one that I think the game was pretty much finished, or at least in a playable state, and then Martin Wallace looked at it and said, "I've got a game here that's about anarchists overthrowing, assassinating world leaders. Like, that's not really a good thing to release." So, and then I think, the way that he married together Sherlock Holmes, specifically the Study in Emerald, it does work really well. Like, it makes it so that the theme is not like offensive and probably not going to get him on a government hit list, or a government like surveillance list. But and I do think that he definitely designed a lot of the cards in that game specifically for that theme. So I think the game probably grew quite a bit once he added Sherlock Holmes, but you're right. Like, there's, it's an anarchist game with a bit of just a sprinkling of Cthulhu, and the Sherlock Holmes aspect is, only there because of A Study in Emerald, the short story.
Right.
Yeah, well, at least it went over better than the Doctor Who card game.
Oh. Stop. Just stop.
Okay. Well, this has been really great. It was a great opportunity for me to meet you, Carissa, and I hope that I keep seeing you on here on episodes of the Longview. We can do more games that you're passionate about.
Oh yeah, TC keeps mentioning, "Hey, you need to come on and talk about the war games we play." So yeah, I just keep reminding him we need to actually break them out again because they've been on a Euro game.
Well, we've been on our Seafall kick. We've been
playing Seafall, but there's been some other things. You keep throwing new stuff at me, and I'm like, let's get back to the old stuff. So
yeah,
well, Time of Crisis is nice, but it's not what I consider a war game.
We need to get our Washington's War and Pass.
Triumph and Tragedy.
Triumph and Tragedy, yes.
There's certain ones that I'd really like, but I think for the most part, we are gonna do some war games. We're gonna be doing war games for the Longview. I definitely want you on, Carissa, because you'll be able to probably be more of a sounding board for TC than I could.
Yes.
So this game has dice, and what do you do with them? All right, great.
That's on a chart, and it's awesome. And then Joe checks out.
Yeah, it's like last night we were doing. Oh man, for the episode we did with Andy. I don't know how much of this is actually going to make it to the final version here, TC. But we may as well. You were there to hear, like, our topic was light games for heavy gamers, and one of Andy, this guy that's on my podcast, a friend of mine, one of his favorite things to do is as soon as somebody mentions a game, regardless of whether or not he's heard of it, he's like, and then he does whatever it takes to shut that door, like slam that door in somebody's face. And so I said, all right, Andy, let's talk about light games for heavy gamers. And there was like probably a 10-second pause.
Yes.
It's like, all right, well, if he's not going to say anything, that was our topic for today.
Yeah. I think his response was like, as long as it's not Dominion. And he's never played Dominion, which is a big inside joke.
Yeah, he's never played Dominion, and every time that's brought up, it's like it like disturbs the core of my being. And
well, I was pretty hard because he was like mentioning all these games, like, oh cool, look at this. It's like $135 game plus shipping for this 18xx game. He mentioned this, what was it, Stellar Horizons, the space game. Oh, this sounds good. That was like $149. I'm like, how do you buy these things? I would be a dead man.
Well, the funny thing is, like, Andy, for him, people complain about Splotter games being expensive, and those are like bargains for him. Yeah, if he can get them for like $120, he's like, oh man, that's so cheap. Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I'm lucky to have Andy around. Well, I don't know if you call it lucky exactly, but let's put it like this. I play those games because Andy's around, so I wouldn't have access to that. But at the same time, I play those games because Andy's around, so like I can't escape them.
Well, at some point, I'd like to have me, you, Carissa, and Andy on to talk about 1846. I think that'd be a hilarious discussion to have.
I gotta play that again then because it's been a while.
It's been a while, but you're like, well, so what wars in 1846?
Oh, gosh,
I'm like, no, this is different.
Hysterical.
This is a train game.
Yeah.
Just say, because I didn't know what an 18XX game was, and the way he was describing it, because he didn't do any descriptions of the actual gameplay. So I'm like, okay, so war game. What was going on in 1846? And I'm trying to think what was going on. And then we sit down and it's like, trains? What? What?
TC must know how to sell you a game. He's like, he must know. He must know that, like, you don't talk about mechanisms. You talk about like all the historical stuff, right? And then and he's like, oh yeah, it's just about all these like railroad barons, and and he goes into the growth of these different railroad companies. And you sit down, and you're like, all right, what war is this railroad going to be running through?
Yeah. I got his number now, though.
You got pretty hard on that game.
I did.
But I think just the four of us talking about 1846 would be really good.
Well, I ended up enjoying it. Yeah. So
we all enjoyed it, but we have different perspectives going into it. So it'd be really cool.
Yeah. I still think that, like, I do like 1846. I think that I enjoy pieces. I enjoy most of that game, but nobody in my group does that thing where they have like a computer and Excel out and they use a spreadsheet. But here's the thing, dude. That makes it so much easier when you just have like your roots all calculated and it's just all put in, by somebody who knows the game. Like, you can get that game down to like 2 hours. Whereas the way that we played, it's like, how much is B&O running for? Oh, 12 a share. It's like, all right, so I've got 4 shares. That means $48. All right, so now I need to like start making change because we run out of ones again. And it's like, it just takes so long. And then every time I've played it, there's always been one player that tries to start up a doomed railroad company. Absolutely doomed. And they are convinced, whoever it is just convinced that they will figure it out as long as they stare long enough at the board.
Or they'll take when we played it last time, it was like, it was the longest turn ever because he kept going to, like, he needed this one rail to go out to make it work. So he's like, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. I'm like, dude, tile 26 is gone. Stop going to that tile.
Oh man, that was in 1846 that you had like track. Okay, because usually the track in that game is pretty. It's not too tight. Like the actual track itself is. That's rarely the problem, but it definitely can be in certain cases.
Yeah, I think it's just that the moon's aligned with it, and it's just like, and I was like, come on, no, you're not getting that big wad of money. You have to get something else. The tile's gone. Just stop trying to get there. It's over.
Just do your game. Just add your dice to it, TC, and say like, you never know how much you'll make. Yeah. You don't know.
No, I want the random events where like a tornado hits and rock falls, or the workers go on strike when building the rails. They don't want to build rails anymore because you've overworked them. That's the kind of 18XX.
There you go, man. Event deck. Just take your. I see Small World in the background there. All you gotta do is take your Tales and Legends expansion from Small World and then turn each one of them into a game effect in 1846. And dude, you will sell. You will sell one copy of that.
Okay.
One copy.
Well, I'll own it and be happy.
It was great talking to you. I got to kind of deal with some kids stuff now.
Yeah, I see that. It was great to meet you, Carissa. We'll see you in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just send me rip the audio file from the YouTube video and give it to me, and I'll start editing it. I've got 2 of them ready to go. I figured we'd start posting them after we officially make the announcement in the Punchboard Media at the end of August. And I'll have like all these episodes, and we can just keep recording and put them out, and we'll have a year's worth of content, and we don't have to worry about this crap.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right. Yeah. Hey, sarcasm on war games. You mean like Small World? Ooh.
Small World's a good game.
Small World. Is Small World a war game?
I would definitely say yes, but it's a very light war game. I use Small World to actually gauge people's interest in war games.
Huh.
It actually started off design-wise. It had I can't remember what the game it was before. I can't remember. But it was like a civilization game where you fight with these civilizations, and the civilizations go into decline, and a new civilization rises up. But they threw a theme on it that was fantasy, and it just like took off and which I'm fine with. But yeah, I use it to gauge people's tolerance for that kind of stuff, because you could play Small World in a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's got to die.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, we're actually still broadcasting. So I just want to thank all of everybody who contributed here in our chat. Especially, it's good seeing you, Mur.
Hey, Mur, good to see you, man.
Yeah. And yeah, we're not going to sign off. So, and TC, you'll kind of doctor up and make it so that this actually has an ending and stuff. So.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. I will try to send you what I've got this weekend so you can see what it's like. But I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised with it.
Oh, dude, no, I'm thrilled. All right, I'm going to click stop broadcast now.